And good afternoon. Welcome to Cool Springs. Today is Wednesday, July the 5th, 2023. This is our series on life lessons. Today, our life lesson is going to be about Solomon. Solomon could be both a life lesson and a hero of the Bible. Today, we're going to look at just life lessons from Solomon. Solomon's story is mostly found in the book of 1 Kings, though we will find him mentioned in Chronicles and in 2 Samuel as well. But majority of the time, it's 1 Kings. Solomon is going to be told by his father David that he's going to be the man to follow him on the throne, and David will actually set Solomon up as the co-regent while David is old and basically bedridden for the last few months or possibly years of his life. David and Solomon will be co-reigning, but Solomon's the younger man who's mobile and able to do things, so that when David passes away, there's a smooth transition to leadership. Unfortunately for Solomon, he's going to be put to multiple tests throughout his life, and some of them he's going to pass with flying colors. And like us, sometimes he's going to just mess up badly. It'll start out with not long after he dies, after his father dies, Solomon is approached by his own mother asking for a favor. And she's asking on behalf of his half-brother, Adonijah. Adonijah has tricked Bathsheba into asking for David's nurse to be given to him as a wife. Well, that would be the same thing as taking the kingdom away from Solomon. Bathsheba doesn't realize that that's what's happened. When Adonijah's plot is found out and Bathsheba presents this idea to Solomon, he realizes the danger that he's in. And he orders Adonijah brought out from his house and put to death because he's tried to deceive his way into the kingdom. He had already given Adonijah the chance to behave yourself, be a good citizen, don't cause trouble, and I'll let you live, right after David died. But Adonijah just couldn't resist pushing the envelope in bad behavior. And so Solomon realizes as long as Adonijah's alive, because he's older than I am, he's always going to be a threat to me as the king. So it is the only thing he can do. He has Adonijah put to death for the crime of trying to basically incite a riot and steal the kingdom away from his brother. So he does good there. Solomon also does good by looking at the plans that David had laid out for him to build the temple. You'll notice we have a new backdrop behind us that's an artist's rendition of what the temple that Solomon built would have looked like. He's followed David's plans. He's gotten together the men that David had assigned to be the workers on the temple. He's instructed the people to go to work and provided what they needed financially to get it done. And when we get to 1 Kings chapter 8, Solomon is going to lead in the dedication of this temple when it's built. And he's going to personally offer so many sacrifices out of his gratitude to God that they're going to have to build a separate altar for him, because the altar that's there for everybody can't hold the people's offerings and Solomon's too. And he's going to lead in this big prayer about establishing God's house and worshiping God, and all the nation will see it. He's a good leader at that point. By the time Solomon gets to the end of his life, though, he has taken little bitty compromises and turned them into bigger and bigger and bigger compromises. He marries all these foreign wives. And instead of being the spiritual leader of his home and leading his wives to worship the one true God, he tolerates them worshiping the gods of the countries that they came from. He allows them to engage in pagan worship right there in Israel. You see, it would be one thing to say, all right, you don't have to convert to my religion, but if you're going to go worship these false gods, you're going to have to make trips back to your own country, because we are not going to defile God's land and God's people with your pagan worship. He didn't do that. He allowed them to worship their gods right there in God's land. And he paid for their altars and their sacrifices using the money out of the treasury of Israel. And so naturally what happened is a lot of the people figured, well, if the king says this is okay, we can mix the worship of God with worshiping these pagan idols too. And he actually led the nation astray. So much so that toward the end of his life, Solomon gets a visit from an old prophet who had worked for his father David, a fellow by the name of Nathan, and Nathan has to tell him, Solomon, because you have behaved so wickedly, because you've turned your heart away and followed these other gods, and you've led the people of Israel astray, when you die, God is going to take the kingdom away from your son. But for David's sake, he'll leave a remnant. So Solomon has some successes. He does some wonderful things early on in his reign as king. But the older he got, the more comfortable he got, the more he started to overtax the people, the more he started worshiping at the altars of his pagan wives, the more he turned his heart away from God. Solomon didn't finish well. We contrast that with the New Testament, where Paul knows he's going to be put on trial before Caesar, and he knows that Caesar will have him put to death because Paul is going to follow God no matter what. Paul will be able to write to his friends and say, I've run a good race. I fought the good fight. There's a crown of reward waiting for me. Paul finished well. The biggest life lesson we can learn from Solomon is that he started out good, but he didn't finish well. In that regard, we don't want to be like Solomon. Thanks for watching.